This is Gerardo Del Real with Resource Stock Digest. Joining me today is the chairman and CEO of Mawson Resources, Mr. Michael Hudson. Mike, how are you this morning?
My normal monkey, Gerardo, top of the world, even though I'm down under.
It's good to hear. I imagine you're sitting back smiling because you had some pretty impressive news this week. I'm going to read the headline and then we'll get into the details. There's a lot there. The headline reads, Mawson intersects new high-grade zone 19.5 meters at 7.1 grams per ton gold, 1,006 ppm cobalt, and that includes an intersection of 7 meters at 17 grams per ton gold and 2,168 ppm cobalt. This is, of course, part of the recent 14.1 kilometer drill program at the flagship in Finland. We're going to talk Australia later on just a bit, but this is the flagship for a reason. Can we go over these results and the main takeaways?
Well, the main takeaways are that we're building scale beneath some initial resources that we put out, December 2018. We're building scale and grade beneath existing resources, which is what we wanted to do. So this project is simply building nicely. This result we put out had context with the result we put out 3 or 4 weeks ago. We're starting to find these high grade shoots developing within the areas that we're drilling, which is nice to see. Of course, what it simply means is what you see, that this deposit can, this project can develop some very high grades, and of course that's a great thing economically. That's a great thing potentially economically when and if this thing is mined, and the resource will come out in some time. The new updated, and it will be interim again. Resource will come out sometime in August or the start of Q3.
It's important to note that the mineralization is relatively shallow from these results, right? I believe that hole 228, that 19.5 meters of 7.1 grams per ton gold, you're finding that right at about 241.8 meters. And another important point is this is 120 meters from the 2018 inferred resource. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that number that you just quoted in terms of depth is downhole depth, and our holes are angled. So that's sub 200 meters vertical. So it's all relatively close to surface here. We're not talking. We're drilling areas that will only be accessible by underground methods. Now, this looks like, from a technical point of view, it starts from surface or within a few meters of surface. So these things will be open pittable, and when I say these things, we've got a number of different resource areas. We've got 3 so far, and we're building up another 2 more very nicely that will be drilled at the end of this year. So more near surface resources. So open pits going to underground, and that's how we saw Kittila up about 150 kilometres north of us, Europe's largest gold mine, operated by Agnico Eagle. That's exactly how that operation was started, and now it's progressing. And it started with a small resource of 300,000 ounces, and now it's north of 7. And if you follow the trend, that is going to a plus 10 million ounce system. And you can sort of see the same development. We're crafting this resource hole by hole here, and it's playing out very well.
Can you talk a bit about the true thickness of the intervals, right? Oftentimes you see a news release and you see a flashy number, 15 meters of 10 grams per ton gold. And then you look and, true width, true thickness is something like 10% or 15%. And then it makes it all irrelevant, right? Can you speak to that a bit?
Well, we think we've got a fairly good handle on orientation and the morphology or the shape of these bodies and what controls them. So that's a critical thing in terms of being able to explore for them and explore for more. And I think that's demonstrable by how we're coming up with news release after news release over the last 2 or 3 months. It's just bang, 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 bang. that plays out to understanding the thicknesses and controls on the mineralization. And we think we're around about the 90% true thickness of mineralization. So we're not drilling those what they call director's holes that look stunning, but in reality are only thin little zones that you're drilling parallel to. So that's not the case here. We orientate all drill core. We've got very firm understanding of our structures and the thicknesses of mineralization. So this is ridgy ditch.
The upcoming resource estimate, Mike, can we speak to what will be included in that resource estimate? I know in my, back of the napkin calculations, I'm looking for somewhere around 1 million ounces, right? Is that a reasonable assumption on my part?
It's within the ballpark of the exploration target that we put out there, Gerardo. We've talked about exploration targets around the range of 1 to 1.2. And it will come in, I believe. I say it's still coming in, still with the program essentially ongoing. It's very hard to pick what grades will be, of course, until we get them. But that's more or less. It's not that we started with just under 500,000 ounces, and we're looking to double that. Basically, is the aim. The key point though to remember is that resource that we put out in December 2018 had approximately 15 kilometres of drilling, and that was about 420,000 ounces constrained and 480,000 ounces gold equivalent unconstrained, which means that there was no mining shapes around it. So it was in that ballpark, right? It was a good start, but that had 15 kilometres of drilling. We've now completed another 30 kilometres of drilling on top of that resource. So this new resource will include drilling that will in total be around 45 kilometres. So it will be a tripling of the information into the resource.
And we're talking the 3 main areas that are going to comprise this resource update, correct?
Correct. I mentioned 2 other areas that are starting to develop. They've got high-grade hits at surface with coincident geophysical anomalies. So they're 2 new areas that we're building up. We may get some smaller tonnage from one of these areas that we've put a number of holes in called Rumiyavi. That may start as the 4th resource area. It just depends on basically the continuity and the geostatistics and the modelling to see if that will fall into the resource. But there's certainly grade and volume there, and we'll just see how that works out in the resource. But it's close. If not this year, it will be next year.
Excellent. And we still have approximately 13 holes, 13 assays pending, right? So this isn't the end of, hopefully not the end of the good news. There's hopefully some more to come.
No, absolutely. We had 37 holes, of which we've reported 24 of those, and still got 13 left. So there's approximately a third or thereabouts of the program still to come, and we'll see what it holds. But so far, this drill program, like each drill program, actually has over delivered and exceeded our expectations internally in many respects. Of course, there's always surprises on the upside and downside in any exploration program, but this always seems to exceed on the upside than the downside. So let's hope that trend continues.
Outside of these 3 areas, the market, and I'm guilty of this myself. I'm excited to see somewhere around 1 million ounces. That would be great. My immediate question to you after I congratulate you that morning, Mike, when you announced that in July, hopefully, is going to be, okay, what's next? What are the next targets? How do we take this resource and then expand on it? I know you're not short on targets. Can you speak to the exploration upside?
Yeah, this is very much a start, Gerardo, with what we're defining here. We converted from an exploration project, if you like, with gold everywhere and lots of gold near surface to drilling these resources, as we've been talking about. And our job this year was to expand those resources. And that will continue to be the main focus for this project. But there's something like 60 kilometres of the host trend within the area that we're looking at now. Not all of that is going to be mineralized, but there's dozen decent targets that need testing. And as we understand more about this mineralization, we can target it better, and that's been proven, and how this project's growing. So this is a multi-million ounce discovery in the making. And as I talked about Kittler, I think in terms of how that project went, you can sort of see the trajectory being similar here. So Kittler started with 300,000 ounces in their initial resource, lots of drilling. Agnico bought them. They published a resource just after Agnico bought of 2 million ounces. And then they've crafted that discovery. They made a decision to start mining. It's over 7 million ounces now, and they've just put in an internal shaft and hundreds of millions of dollars of capital to add infrastructure to go deeper. And it's going to go north of 10 million ounces, is in my opinion, and will continue to grow. So that's Agnico's biggest mine, and that's how these orogenic gold systems tend to be, right? They tend to be continuous and not like planes of mineralization where you drill gold. It comes and goes, of course, but and that's the nature of mineralization. But they just continue to get bigger in the general sense, and that's what's happening here at a much earlier stage than Kittler.
You mentioned that asset was bought out at around the 2 million ounce range. Was that correct, Mike?
That's correct. It didn't have a resource of 2 million ounces, but of course Agnico saw there was 2 million ounces there, I'm sure, and that it was going to be able to get a lot bigger.
Do you recall what that takeout price was?
Yeah, it was around 150 million US, but that was in a very different market at the start of the last bull cycle around early 2000s. So they and it also had some metallurgical issues, which it still does, but Agnico sorted those. So it was refractory ore. So everyone saw it as just too difficult. So Agnico took the punt on that asset there, and it should be pointed out that we don't have those metallurgical issues. So different times, right? And the asset values that have sold since then around the world have been, a lot higher still. But Agnico are smart operators.
So I'll interpret and translate for everybody. What that means, folks, is he believes 2 million ounces here would be better than 2 million ounces there at the time. Of course, that asset has grown. I kid a bit, but it's cleaner metal for sure. And Mawson's market cap, even after the good reception the market had to the news, is still a tiny 56 million, which is going to bring me to my next question. Let's talk Australia a bit. A group that I'm familiar with, Fosterville South. I'm familiar with Brian Slusarczyk, like that team. I think it was a heck of an acquisition, and they're out the gate they just started trading about a week and a half or so ago, and they have a market cap of approximately 72 million. Congratulations to that team. I am rooting for them and keeping an eye on it, and largely in part because of the fact that there are a lot of similarities. There's differences, but a lot of similarities in the address of where Fosterville South's land is. I believe some of it is actually right next to the ground that you just picked up. So can you speak a bit about the project or the projects, I should say, in Australia and when that will come into play? Because frankly, if Mawson has a market cap of 58 million, Fosterville South has a market cap of approximately 72 million. And then we throw in Finland. There's a lot of compelling upside in Mawson just from the exploration potential, if we believe that the market, and the market's always right, has assigned a fair valuation to the projects at Fosterville South. Can you speak to that a bit?
Well, I'm rooting for Fosterville South every day, and I know some of that team well. In fact, the main people here in Australia who are running it, I've worked with before and respect highly, and they've done a fantastic job of building a market cap out the gate that is quite impressive. You mentioned it's around 70 million today, and I like to think that's the hidden 70 million in Mawson, right? That's what we've got in our back pocket. Now, we closed on an acquisition in Australia around 3 weeks ago. On any technical basis, I think if you wish to compare Fosterville South's projects with what we have in Mawson, they're comparable. They're different in slightly different ways, but they're pretty comparable in every different aspect. And we've just closed on that acquisition. We've just put out a few press releases about closing. We're pulling together all that data now. We've got high grades of drilling that stand up very similar to the grades we've been talking about in Finland over the last 10 minutes. We've got a long strike extensions from existing mines. We've got clear Fosterville style mineralization that just hasn't been tested to depth below 50 meters. We've got the first right of refusal on the largest land package in the state. That's over 3,000 square kilometers. It's just a package that really is just waiting to be talked about, and we're just about to start doing that. So there's your hidden market cap in Mawson, if you like, if you want to play any comps with companies that are doing so well like Fosterville South.
Fantastic. Anything else you'd like to add, Mike? I know we're eagerly anticipating more assays. I know those are coming soon. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, it's just going to be huge news flow coming out of Mawson over the next 4 or 5 months, with more assays from Finland. The resource imminent at the start of Q3. We'll start demonstrating data and plans for Australia. Hopefully, around the time of that resource or a little bit after, we'll be in a position to start drilling in Australia and keeping the news flow going. There'll be certainly a lot of activity on the ground in Finland, looking in summer permitted areas for extensions of the mineralized system, and if we have success there, we'll be drilling there. And we have a gold market, right? So it's all playing out very well.
Treasury still healthy. You have approximately $3 million or so in cash?
Yeah, just a bit shy of 3 million in cash. So, of course, with all that work that I said, it will need a top up at some point if we are to execute on all that work. But healthy enough to do the early stage stuff and keep the company going very actively.
Mike, pleasure as always. Look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks, Dorado.